Hello and welcome to the show with me, Gillian Gossel. Today, my guest is Evan Vandenberg, who is the Director of Business Development for Wax, which is the leading platform for NFTs, collectibles. And welcome to the show, Evan.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Gillian. Appreciate it.
You're in the middle of an exciting period because last month we had the Garbage Pail Kids from Topps. That sold out in just over a day. That was pretty exciting. And then on Tuesday the 16th, you had the Topps GPK Goes Exotic. Oh my goodness. And in just over an hour, 67 minutes, they all sold out. The 7,000 mega packs and the 13,020 standard packs sold out. And it was the biggest NFT so far, with delivering more than $200,000. Wow.
Yeah. So look, I will just caveat that by saying there's some really good things and there's a lot to learn from it. I think the interest is awesome, right? I think the demand side of it was incredible. Even the fact that it took 67 minutes, probably isn't really reflective of the amount of like backlog orders and everything else we had. I think there was incredible demand for that set. So yeah, it was great to see. I'm sure the people at Topps, the people at Topps were really happy to see that. But there was plenty to learn from it. There were hiccups in the process, no doubt. But generally speaking, yeah, wild NFT day.
Did you onboard new people, or was it the same audience from the first set of collectibles from Topps?
So primarily the first. It would be the original collectors or the existing collectors, and I know that because we wanted to do we'll call it kind of like a goodwill favor to the community, and we wanted to reward the people who've been kind of supporting this community and building it up. So we actually gave a 25-30 minute window where community members could go in and buy them first. And as you can imagine, with 67 minutes, I can just backwards do the math here. And primarily, I would assume it's probably something like 85% original, card holders, and then some that heard about the first one and now are coming back for the second one. So my guess is probably somewhere between 80% in that range.
So am I right in saying that with the sale of the primary collectibles, you had to sign on and be a Wax account with Topps, and then you paid in fiat for the first primary sale, and then the secondary market is in the Wax token?
Correct.
And obviously I was speaking a little while ago with William. One of the key factors, of course, is that the Wax wallet is easy to use. That is a big factor in this.
Yeah, massive. That's really I think the key kind of component right now for Wax. Outside of bringing IP and some of the other tools and ecosystem we built around it, at the core of what's been successful, right, has been the extremely easy onboarding of customers. And
that's huge.
Yeah, right. To us, it's like there's multiple mindsets, right? There's kind of this, like, everyone has to own their keys. Everyone has to do all these things, manage their own wallet. And it's like, sure, yes, if you have valuable things, I'm the first person to say, go get a hardware wallet, do it all the right way. But to onboard somebody who wants to simply, play games, collect, things here and there, building this Wax Cloud wallet and the social sign-ons. So, you can sign on with your Gmail, you could sign on with email password, you could sign on with, whatever kind of auth that we provide. I think there's like 10 or 11 options. Excuse me. And it's been incredible for onboarding customers. And, especially when we start working with bigger brands that have, we'll call them non-coiners, right, for lack of a better term, aren't familiar with blockchain, like the brand, their IP, want to collect these things. I think we'll see a lot of that with like the Shatner stuff. Huge following of people who are either, pseudo, knowledgeable about maybe Bitcoin, but not really active NFT collectors. And I think we're going to see a wave of new collectors with that, particular IP. But again, I think, one of the reasons a lot of these partners are choosing us to go with is the fact that, we can actually do these things, and they can simply say, hey, look, everyone on my team can actually sign up and do this. And they don't have to know anything about crypto. They don't have to own crypto. And then it's kind of a gateway drug where they learn about this stuff, they get interested, they care, and then it's a much easier sell to then kind of upgrade them to the next level, customer at that point.
I know with the first round, the first Topps sale, within minutes of the sale finishing, there were cards on eBay. It was kind of crazy. And I think the latest figures that I looked at were that the secondary market for the first Topps, the Garbage Pail Kids, was about $800,000, which is a very significant amount of traffic. Do you know, is that being replicated with this sale? Have you seen much evidence of a secondary market kicking in?
So Yeah, it's way more than $800,000 total trading on Series 1 at this point.
Wow. Okay, I've old data
yeah,
there. Yeah,
probably close to 2
that's
million.
probably yesterday's data. It's so moving so
Oh,
fast.
yeah, maybe I'm a little off.
No,
But,
no, no, no. I'm just teasing. It's moving so fast. It is amazing.
yeah, no. So it has been really significant in terms of that secondary market. I mean, to do 10x the primary market, within a few weeks is incredible. I mean, I think like for Series 1 specifically, that stuff's going to trade. As long as we keep doing these garbage pail kids, those are always going to be the most collectible. They'll be the most rare. They're the kind of the original ones. I think they're going to see kind of a long tail effect of those particular assets trading in the ecosystem. Now, in terms of Tiger King, there's certainly been a secondary market. I would say that it's not as healthy as Series 1. And I think that's for multiple reasons. More cards, less content, a little bit,
It's
a little bit
newer.
due to the fact that, say that one more time.
It's newer as well. I mean, the Joe Exotic, it's a fairly new phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a derivation from the kind of original garbage pail sets, right?
Yeah.
And so it was more of like hey, like this is a timely thing that they did in the physical world, and they wanted to try it on blockchain. And I'm happy that we tried that one first on with bigger numbers and a different payment method. Like doing this the way we did it on Tiger King, I'm happy about, because at least we've learned a lot in the process, and that we can keep things, we can learn from that, and we can design, Series 2 and through the rest of the series to be a much smoother experience for consumers. But the secondary markets, yeah, I mean, I watch it all day. So, I mean, there's tons of trades going on. Just while I've been on this call, there's been, I don't know, last time I checked, 382 transactions. So there's a lot.
Oh my goodness.
It's not as healthy, right, in terms of return on the cards, but there's still a lot of volume. I think, people, it's growing on people. So anyways, that's
cool.
my
Question for you. You mentioned a learning curve. Is there, or would you consider limiting sales from the primary issuance? The way, like if you're going to a big concert, there's normally only so many tickets you could buy. Is that something that you have or you will introduce?
Every set we've ever done is limited. So there's always a finite number of packs.
But no, in terms of the purchaser. So can I buy, if I have $1 million, can I buy it all?
Oh, I see.
Yes.
So by the way, lesson learned on that front. So on this one, I think, $200,000 of cards went to roughly 600 different credit card holders, right? That's a big purchase amount per person. And one of the things that I'm taking away from this is we need to gate that, right? Like I would rather, and I think people always lose this in conversation, is like, there's discussion of like, oh, well, all the whales went in and bought it. It's like, I would way rather every person get one pack, right? Like think about that. For me, that's 20,000 pack or 10,000 packs. No, 20,000. So that's 20,000 customers who are trading. Like that's a way healthier ecosystem.
And it's a better feeling too. You're not having like the touts that come in the big concerts, the big names. Nobody likes to have to buy an inflated price because as you say, a whale in crypto terms. But although that's an interesting point, I think it's an interesting thing to look at. As I say, you're learning all the time. So it's how do you finesse it? Yeah,
there is, right? Because there's this gating factor, right? It's very hard to find out the exact economics of something, right? Like, hey, we can't perfectly predict demand. We can fully understand supply, and then it becomes, okay, if we understand there's this demand, there's this many people who want to get these packs, how can we design a system, whether it's time released or it's limited per account or limited number of purchases per credit card? I think that's 100% going to be implemented on anything going forward, because we've seen that people really want these things, and we don't want it to be just eaten up by a handful of people. And
I'm glad. It's great to hear that, because I know it's as you say, it's a learning curve. It's a huge learning curve. Like, how does it work? But I think that would be very good to have. How important is community? You were mentioning earlier about how important is community to Wax, and how are you growing community?
So, yeah, I mean, our community drives 90% of all of this, right? That's not even debatable, I don't think. And I think, the community by and large, right? I mean, there's always ups and downs with communities, right? But in large, I mean, they do an incredible job of promoting things, trying to get new people on board. I mean, I get inbound sales, called biz dev leads from our community every day. I mean, it's really like they are the backbone of like what makes this whole thing work. We try, we try to listen to them. They give us incredible ideas too, for the record. I mean, we hire people out of our community all the time to do like artwork or one-off stuff, dev work. So we have a very strong, I think, relationship with the community. It's not that we do everything perfect, but we certainly we recognize that they are the backbone of this whole thing. And they're going to be the way that we get to the next level for sure.
Yeah. And where is the community based geographically? Is it mostly the States, Europe, Asia? Where's the spread?
It's, I mean, we've got Korean channels, Chinese channels. The main wax.io channel happens to be in English. In terms of where they're based, you know what? We did a poll somewhat recently. I think that the age demographics was interesting to me too. It was actually older than I had initially anticipated. Just being gaming and blockchain, I figured it would draw a younger crowd, but there's lots and lots of people in their, late 30s, 40s, 50s in the channels who love collecting.
I was going to say, because Sharif from EOS Dublin, he used to collect the Garbage Pail Kids cards, and I was laughing. He said, "You did what?" And he was only 7, of course, and he's in his 30s now. So maybe that's the demographic, because when they first came out, he was a 7-year-old, and perhaps your audience are kind of like, that's why they're in their 30s. They're older, not just the gamers.
Yeah, and I think it's going to, there'll be influxes of different audiences, of different, geographical audiences, but then also age demographics, all sorts of things, just depending on the IP, right, of the day and what's coming, what's going on at that time. But I really would say that the geographic breakdown is incredibly global. I mean, I know for a fact, personally, I probably interacted with people from 40 or 50 different countries in our community, like on a one-on-one basis. So it is quite global. I think we need to really bolster up the Asian presence. Our Korean audience is ravenous. I think, we're certainly doing more on that front in terms of getting, full-time help on community management in those communities, getting translations done in real time so that things come out in multiple languages. So yeah, it's a good question, because it's certainly like a point, a pressing one at this point. Like, how do we engage with these audiences in a more meaningful way, and so that we don't just cater to the English-speaking crowds? So yeah,
interesting.
I couldn't give you a perfect breakdown though.
No, just curious. Now, question for you: because it's so popular, attracting huge amounts of attention, right? And you mentioned before sort of recording about that Twitter hack and all the Elon asking, send me Bitcoin, and sort of all things that happened. So the security of NFTs, right? Are they totally secure? And what are scammers doing? And what advice would you give to people because obviously people are going to try and game the system. So do you know what they're doing, and what advice are you giving to people? Like, don't send Bitcoin, don't send Ethereum.
Yeah. So my advice is, so nothing's perfectly secure, right? I mean, the funny thing is, like, Bitcoin didn't get hacked, right? Let's be clear. The whole Twitter thing was Twitter got hacked. Bitcoin was fine. It was just a means of exchange of value, right? That was exploited by this hack.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing typically goes for NFTs. Generally speaking, it's not that somebody's hacking into the system and taking your NFTs, right? What ends up ultimately being the problem is phishing attempts, fraudulent like for instance, with Garbage Pail Kids, if you're not careful, somebody could go in and they could make something that looks and feels like a Garbage Pail Kid card, right? And you could end up sending them money for it if you don't check the author accounts and reference those. And so I know we've been thinking about different ways of making that more, we'll call it user-friendly, just more simplistic, right? Because right now you have to look at the asset, and you can see that its publisher is Tops, right? And that's like a locked-in name. Nobody else can have that name, right? But how do people know that, right? Sometimes, I'm always like, well, how does the normal kind of collector of these things verify that, Tops with 2 Ps versus Tops with 1? I mean, there's a lot of ways where people can try to scam the system. And so we're trying to come up with, some really user-friendly ways to cross, to reference check, or to like throw a flag when something isn't from we'll call it a verified author, things of that nature, where
that's probably a really good idea. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the first emails came through from Nigerian princes. Now,
oh yeah.
I never fell for that, right? But people did, or the more recent, where people did hacks from like fitness.com, and then they sent over your password, and they wanted, we've seen you watching adult videos unless you send us Bitcoin. So it takes a while for the community to filter through. I think it's a great idea to figure out, to help people. You're right, because like with the Twitter hack recently, Twitter was hacked, Bitcoin wasn't, and we all know it's not like if you see the name of the Twitter account, if the other name isn't matched either, it's kind of obvious. But it's only obvious once you know that, So I think that's a really good thing to do. So right now, that's all the nitty gritty. I want to talk about some of the new things coming down the track. As you were saying, you've been working on these a long time. They've all sort of come at once in some ways. William Shatner. Whoa. You're going to take his personal effects and make NFTs out of them.
Yeah. So the William Shatner deal is really kind of like a unique one. one, I mean, just like having him as a part of the Wax Advisory Council and just having him as a sounding, a sounding board and somebody who's promoting the project is huge, right? I mean, the guy was doing Priceline commercials, made an ungodly amount of money doing that. He's really been a successful marketer, post Star Trek and everything else he's done, acting wise. But yeah, so the NFTs themselves he has this very like large archive of images throughout his life, interesting moments, kind of behind the scenes looks at things. Dental records, I believe, is one of the things in there. He's really funny, and he's good at like branding his own stuff and writing personal notes about each thing. And so he's trying to kind of memorialize all that on blockchain and make it into a fun collectible game. And we're also going to be doing with that NFT series is there's going to be, I believe, 100 or so signed pieces of art, headshots, other things, moments of time where he's actually signing them, and they will be, delivered to you if you win one of the, we'll call it 100 like really rare cards.
Do you know what I love about, I love William Shatner. There's very few people I'm sure who don't love him. And I didn't see his ads. We didn't see them this side of the pond, but I love him for his Boston Legal and Star Trek, whatever. But what I love though is that oftentimes when a famous person dies, their personal effects are auctioned off and they're dead. It's posthumously. Yeah. So I love the fact that William Shatner can capitalize on his work over the years and benefit from it. That is such a cool thing. I'm sure you'll have other big names coming to you once they see how he does it. I love that idea because it's fair. It's like you have to be dead before you get some money, and then look good to you.
Well, and even beyond the money, right? Like for him, he's been interested in crypto for a long time. Like to his credit, he's been really pretty forward thinking about this. He's not just like one of these celebrities who's like promoting an ICO or something. Like this guy really has been a part of it. He was doing stuff with Materium. Has been really kind of like interested in actually figuring out how this whole world works and has a pretty good understanding of it. And I think this is just the first kind of rev of like, hey, what can I do that's fun for people and also gets them involved in the space I care about, I think is part of that as well. And I will just say in his defense, and I haven't been working tons directly with William at all, but he's been incredibly easy to work with for the team, which is like, way easier than most companies. He's on there on Twitter, he'll promote, he's talking about Garbage Pail Kids and other things, and he's happy to do, different stuff that I think other people are really skittish about, and he's, very comfortable in his own positioning and his own brand, clearly. And
but I love it because it's much nicer to think that you can get something from a living man, a living legend, than they're dead. And that's often what happens. And so I really love that. I didn't realize he was quite so into crypto as well. So it even makes it more interesting. Tell me then, Capcom Street Fighter, what's going to happen there?
Yeah, so we're still finalizing, there's a lot of the artwork and stuff is already well beyond getting started. It's like closer to production. We're trying to kind of iron out exactly what we want. It's going to be, I think in an ideal world, it's going to be a collectible mixed with a game. So like a collectible NFT concept mixed with a game built around the Street Fighter characters. There will be different characters and have different values. And we're trying to find a happy medium within the license to do something, a relatively simple game mechanic tied into a crypto collectible. I love this project. I just Street Fighter to me is so cool. I would love to do like an actual Street Fighter game on blockchain and, winner takes all type thing. It's a little bit more nuanced.
Are you a gamer?
Yeah, I play a fair amount of games. Not with the puppy as much anymore. But,
now that you've grown up.
before that, if you give me a free day, I certainly would. And I used to play, and I was a huge Street Fighter fan growing up. I went to the movies. And I can only imagine my parents going to Street Fighter movies. They're probably just getting older. It seems like a very, very tiny sacrifice they're willing to make. But yeah, we had all the games. So me and my brother used to play all the time, probably ended in multiple Street Fighter fights in our own house as well. So I'm very familiar with the brands, the characters. Exciting. I love them. So anything we can do there, I think is great. Yeah.
And then I see also the Bad Crypto podcast, the Bold, Joel and Travis. I know them. They're great guys. They're doing blockchain heroes, but they're not releasing who they are. That's like 50 blockchain heroes from the real world.
Yeah.
Do any clues? Who are they going to be? Do we know?
They've released a lot of the artwork. I know that there is no right or wrong answer for who these people are or who the cards are, built after. But I think Joel and Travis are doing something really interesting. I think Joel and Travis have done a few things really well. One, they're very creative people. They know a lot about the blockchain space. They know all the people in the blockchain space, and they built a cool. I mean, their artwork is like top tier stuff. Like it's really, really good. What they've put out there, and even just the stuff they've shared publicly, and then some of the things I've been able to see kind of sneak peeks of. It's just awesome. And I think in terms of like a collectible that's relevant to a lot of the people in our space that maybe aren't familiar with something like Garbage Pail Kids, like this is something where they can get behind that. And it's a great marketing tool to get other chains and other people involved, right? Because ultimately these cards are not like, it's not like one for every Wax team member, right? It's like these are really holistically looking at the crypto space. And I think Joel and Travis have built an insane community. I think they've got 800, 900 people in their Telegram channel who are all day, every day. I'm in it, and they're just talking about BC heroes. And so I think Joel and Travis are going to have a real success with that project. And all the credit to them on how they've been able to kind of get that artwork done. They're structuring things in a different way. They've really taken a lot of learnings from other projects, other things we've even, learned from, and really kind of taken that to heart and really built a cool collectible set.
Cool. Now the next lot, or the last one I want to ask you about today. Now I don't know anything about these, right? Pogs and Cogs. You're going to have to explain them to me. What are Pogs and what are Cogs? Well, Pogs so are pajamas in Ireland. Pogs are a nickname for pajamas.
Okay. So I actually grew up playing Pogs. I remember I was living in Asia at the time, but I would come back to the States and be with my cousins. And I remember like it was like the coolest thing when I was growing up. We were in Minnesota, and they all just constantly were playing this game called Pogs. Basically, you stack these. They're Pogs, but they're more or less like chips, right? Almost like poker chips, but they have cool designs on them, different weights, different kind of, we'll call them material strengths and whatnot. But the idea is you take a big, heavier one called a slammer, and you slam it down, and then the Pogs flip upside down or right side up, and then that's kind of the game mechanic. And so what they built with Cogs is a blockchain-based version of that, where each of these individual Pogs is actually an NFT, and they have different branding. I think we're going to see a lot of like kind of IP stuff going in and out of that game, where they're going to have different sets with different IP partners. It'll have different characters with it, and you'll actually be able to play a game, which is to me a big cool kind of add-on. It's one thing to do collectibles; it's another thing to do like a game that was already a collectible and a game. It's kind of a rare combo. Pokemon being one like that, where you could actually battle, and like there was a fun element to it as well. But Cogs I'm very excited for. And so the guys building that, Ben Fairbank and Arclegger or Adam. So he was one of the lead game designers for H1Z1, which was this massively popular kind of the first battle royale game. Had a really cool aesthetic, very like kind of dark. So he's been a really, well-known game developer, designer and developer for years. And so him and Benny came together, and this is kind of the first project we're launching on Wax. I think there's a ton more coming from those guys. I know there is. And I'm really excited to have them on board. I think just having like a genuinely talented game developer building on blockchain is a good sign. And then also, Benny's got an incredible breadth of knowledge in terms of blockchain, and they've got Red Fox Labs and a few other things to help kind of fund and build these projects.
Wow. So, I hate to ask, because there's a huge amount here, right? What next? I'm exhausted of what next. You're going to go home and collapse.
No. What's next? So in the bounds of like what I can share and what I can't share, I think there's more massive IP coming, right? We announced Atari yesterday. So their CEO is actually joining our advisory council. I think we're going to have some cool, meaningful projects there. So that's interesting. But I think even past that, I think we're really starting to kind of, round up the major gaming IP players, and not even just gaming, even entertainment. And I think you're going to see some of that, especially in the entertainment space, coming out very, very soon with some interesting things coming. And I'll give you like a few ideas. So outside of like collectible cards, right, there's tons of other things you can do with NFTs, right? Gaming, other sort of, mechanics that are interesting. I think one of the really cool things that we're seeing is, especially during this COVID time, like, I don't know if that's what's driving it. It doesn't, it's not like people come out and obviously say that, but like, it seems there's an element of this, but physical toy and collectible distribution, I think, is being slowed down, right? You can't just walk into your local comic book store here, at least in the United States, and go buy something, right? That's become a bit more difficult. I mean, you probably can in some states, and in others they're probably shut down. But in lieu of that, they really want to find ways to kind of enhance, their physical offerings by kind of, we'll say, adding an NFT component to them. And why this is great for Wax, and one of the things I see as a huge benefit is, okay, we can leverage somebody's massive physical distribution and start there, and then bring them onto the digital platform with the items that they get in their, in their case. I can't go into the specifics of the different things, but if you get that and now you have a QR code and you can scan it, and we can actually, then give you a digital replica of that thing, or give you a digital pack or a digital this or that, right? Then to me, that's such a gain for the whole ecosystem, because then you get millions and millions of people who are now introduced to this thing through a meaningful play, right? Where they actually care about this thing already. And now you're giving them another way to kind of explore that and to interact with it, right?
Yeah.
And so, primarily people have been like, oh, you got to start digital and then, maybe something physical later. And I think I'm becoming, really intrigued by the idea of starting with physical distribution and bringing it backwards. And, even if you convert at a 1% rate, right? I mean, those are huge numbers for blockchain. So I think that's certainly one of the more exciting things.
That's interesting. Actually, that's very interesting, because also you have community too as well. And then going back to the point we made at the very start, because it's so easy to onboard with the Wax wallet. Takes the pain out of it. I mean, I recently was trying to log on to something. It took me 2 hours and I couldn't get onto it. I went, I'm done. I'm done. And, and I wanted to get on. I wasn't just somebody who was sort of mildly interested. So I think that's your big, big USP, apart from everything else. But the fact that it's so easy to get onto the site is massive. And then people will follow suit. You're trailblazing.
Yeah, and I will say, just the developer ecosystem on Wax is just rapidly developing. I mean, you're familiar with some of these teams. Obviously, you work with some of them as well. But I'm just watching how fast these marketplaces are evolving and getting better, and just the technical the infrastructure, stuff that's being built, and the tools and everything else is incredible. So that for me is such a good sign, right? Like when you see that sort of like, hey, we're just doing this because we know it's good for the community and we know that people will use it, and we actually think we can build a business on this platform. I mean, that's really the network effect I want to see, because then it's like our team expands, right? We have 100 people, and it's 200 people, and that's the beauty of decentralized platforms, right? Is we want these guys to make money and have their own business on our platform. That is the best thing for us. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Thank you so much for your time today, Evan. That was a lot of information to share. Very exciting. It's like the buses, none, and then like 5 come at once. So congratulations, and we hope we'll speak very soon.
Thank you so much for having me.